we need to talk about Amash because we had a whole main segment about that, and as we were talking off the air, I wasn't even aware that he was out of the race until very recently. So we were also speaking about Twitter. Well, speaking of Twitter, this is right off of Justin Amash's Twitter. This is the thread where he does announce that he is not going to be running. It says, "Thanks for your support. So I've been exploring to run for president as a potential nominee of the Libertarian Party. I spent nearly 3 weeks assessing the race, appearing in media, talking to delegates and donors, watching the Libertarian Party's convention plan unfold, and gathering feedback from family, friends, and other advisors. After much reflection, I've concluded that circumstances don't lend themselves to my success as a candidate for president this year, and therefore I will not be a candidate. This was a difficult decision for me, especially having seen grassroots supporters put so much effort into this campaign. It's been humbling and awesome. By the way, one of our last guests, Jacob, he was one of those supporters. He was someone who went over to the Libertarian Party specifically to support Amash. Says, I continue to believe that a candidate from outside the old parties offering a vision of government grounded in liberty and equality can break through in the right environment, but this environment presents extraordinary challenges. Polarization is near an all-time high. Electoral success requires an audience willing to consider alternatives. Both social media and traditional media are dominated by voices strongly averse to the political risk posed by a viable third candidate. The new reality of social distancing levels the playing field among the candidates in many respects, but it also means lesser-known candidates are more dependent on adequate media opportunities to reach people. Today, most Americans are understandably more interested in what life will look like tomorrow than they are in broader policy debates, and news coverage has reflected those priorities. At the same time, fundraising challenges posed by an idled economy will hinder advertising. It says the Libertarian Party's national committee members and delegates have worked diligently to organize a national convention, but lingering uncertainty regarding ratification of online voting, the feasibility of 50-state ballot access and related legal challenges, and unity after the nomination have also weighed heavily on me. We must address these issues as a party to ensure we maximize our potential. It says, I've been speaking directly to delegates about this opportunity for only a short time, but these conversations have solidified my belief that the Libertarian Party is well positioned to become a major and consistent contender to win elections at all levels of government. I remain invested in helping the party realize these possibilities and look forward to success ahead. If you aren't already a member of the National Libertarian Party, I encourage you to join me in becoming one so we can continue working toward freedom, peace, and prosperity. With appreciation, Justin. Pete, what is your reaction to this statement?
Well, I think you know what my reaction is to that statement. First of all, I'm glad that I'm glad that we have somebody like Justin Amash in Washington. I think he's been a very good congressman. I've given to his congressional campaigns in previous years, and I think the world of him. I think this was probably right. You and I have discussed offline that we thought it was a big mistake for Justin to run. It doesn't seem like he would be able to have the effect that he wanted in the race. In fact, I'm not sure that the Libertarians in general can have any positive effect in the race this year, because Trump has sort of locked up his base of supporters. And
well, I do want to say that I do think Amash would have been the one Libertarian candidate that would have actually gotten some of this media attention that he's talking about. You know, we talked off the air that I think Congressman Amash is talking out both ends of his mouth a little bit because he's saying, well, for instance, it's right there. I mean, I'm using his own words. These are his words straight off of his Twitter. And he's saying he's concerned about things like fundraising, media attention. Who else in the Libertarian Party has any chance of getting any of those things besides Justin Amash?
Well, I think maybe Vermin Supreme could get some media attention.
I don't even know who that is.
He's the guy with who wears the boot on his head.
Okay, the boot guy. Okay, I know the boot guy. All right, but he's not a serious candidate. And
he says he is.
Okay, anybody can say. I could say I'm a serious candidate. I mean, I could declare my candidacy right now on the air, but that doesn't mean a whole lot. I mean, but Justin Amash is a sitting congressman. Okay. He made headlines because he left the Republican Party as a never Trumper. And he got a lot of good press for that because the press loves never Trumpers. And then, he was an independent for a while. And now he is the first Libertarian Party congressman in the history of the country, as far as I know, right? He's the first
Right.
Libertarian Party congressman in the history of the nation. And of course, he ends this with saying, join the Libertarian Party. But it seems to me his initial experience with the Libertarian Party has not been good.
No.
That's why I feel like, there's a little bit of talking on both sides of the mouth.
Yeah. I do agree. He still is a libertarian, I guess. He's still a member of the party, so he is officially a libertarian member of Congress. By the way, taking this big picture, I have something else to share, my reaction to the Justin Amash thing. Justin Amash is dropping out of the presidential race, which makes our latest podcast episode very timely. It was... It says next week we interview a Biden surrogate. Hashtag dropout show. And we have talked about that too. That whole Tara Reid thing is the perfect opportunity for Joe Biden, who does appear to have dementia, to drop out of the race.
Oh, that's too funny.
So we'll see if we can get a Biden supporter on next week. I've put out some feelers.
Well, speaking of dropping out, one thing we never followed up on either was we had mentioned, or you had mentioned actually, because I didn't know, I had to research this, that Jesse Ventura was looking into becoming the Green Party nominee. And then like the very next day, he's like, nah, I'm not going to do it. And he was creating some real buzz for the Green Party. And then he just was like, nah, I'm not going to do it. So it's kind of interesting because Amash and Ventura, I think, would have been interesting. If they had been in the race, I really think they would have been interesting. And they definitely would have been good for the show. to talk about them. So.
Right. And Ventura, whatever you think about him as a person, I mean, obviously he has a lot of baggage, but he is a former governor. And so I think you do have to take him seriously to some degree. And he's doesn't really fit in perfectly with the Greens. He doesn't fit in perfectly with the Libertarians. He is very much an independent thinker. So I think you're right. It would have been interesting because who is he siphoning votes away from? Is he taking people off the sidelines? Is he taking people out of the Biden camp, out of the Trump camp? I honestly don't know. And could he be, there was a time in 1992 when it looked like Ross Perot was not going to be just a third party candidate, but perhaps the winner, or at least the runner up in that race, until he kind of went off the deep end and alienated a lot of his voters.
I believe wholeheartedly he would have won the race if he hadn't done that whole weird thing with his daughter's wedding, because it'd be sabotaged by the Republicans. That was clearly meant to damage the Republicans. So I think he would have won if he hadn't done that. So that's my opinion.
I think so too. You had other odd things like that made people question his sanity. But the point is, a third-party candidate could theoretically win. We treat it like it's a complete impossibility, but it absolutely could win. And if you have somebody as controversial as, say, Donald Trump. Donald Trump threatened to run third party in 2016. And could he have done it? He kind of jumped in a little too late to be able to get on the ballot in enough states. But if he had started earlier, he could have run third party, and he probably could have won. So, I don't count these guys out just because they're third party. I think we have to keep an eye on them, especially now, because I think there's a lot of voter dissatisfaction, not just over the economy, but over inequality and just a lot of things that aren't really being addressed by the major parties.
Oh no, I think that's 100% true. But one thing to keep in mind. The big victory for the Libertarian Party right now is if they could get even one electoral vote. So if Amash had gotten even one electoral vote, seriously, I mean that seriously, if he had been able to get even one electoral vote, that would have been a victory for the Libertarian Party. And he might have been able to do that. I don't know for sure. I don't know how popular he is, for instance, in Michigan, if he could have done that. But of course, Michigan is a very important state. He could have cost Trump the election, theoretically, if he did well in Michigan or even won Michigan. You know what I mean? Right. That kind of a thing. Right. Some states actually split their delegates. I don't know if Michigan's one of them. No. Most of them don't. But even if he got one delegate, or if he got one state, it would be a huge victory for the Libertarian Party. Huge victory for the Libertarian Party. And he's one of those people. Yeah. Go ahead, Pete. I'm sorry.
The only two states that split their votes currently are Nebraska and Maine.
Well, there you go. If you got a vote out of Maine, Maine's kind of kooky. You know what I mean? If you got a vote out of Maine or something like that, that would have been a big deal. And we do still have faithless electors, of course.
Yes, I was going to mention that. Ron Paul won 2 delegates in.
That's what I thought of. And Colin Powell comes to mind also. Colin Powell is one of those guys who's gotten a faithless delegate before. So, but that would be big news for a libertarian candidate. It really would. And it would help them with fundraising, would help them to have viability. So that's the kind of victory that I think Amash could have given them. And unfortunately, that's just not going to happen. And I do want to share this because I shared it on our actual official Twitter, because this is I think this kind of sums up my personal opinion of what happened here. Let's see if I find the right one here. I want to make sure I got the right one. There it is. So we've got Amash there. Nice little meme there. I think I will run for president with the Libertarian Party. Meets with libertarians for 3 weeks. I'm out. I'm gone. That's it. No more candidacy. And we've talked about some of the problems in the Libertarian Party, and this is the irony, and I can't emphasize this enough. Libertarianism is all about voluntarism. It's all about the non-aggression principle. It's all about basically convincing people, talking to people, letting them have choices. And so often, my experience with big L libertarians has always been they're incredibly exclusionary. And I can agree with them on 30%, 50%, 90%. I can come that close and they'll still dismiss me. And that's, I think, the biggest problem with the Libertarian Party. And I think that's why Amash isn't running. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.